You know, honestly.
And you're right.
Yeah, I just call him as I see him. But really, like, the one thing about this whole story is you're just sitting there the whole time going, no way, this is unbelievable. Was that your first kind of initial reaction?
Yeah, reading the book, that was my exact reaction. I mean, the book, it's jaw-dropping. I mean, that you can't believe that it's a true story and this actually happened. And so the trick of the movie was to kind of make this guy the center of the story and kind of turn him into like an unreliable narrator where, you know, suddenly you start to become aware, wait a minute, I have to reevaluate everything I've been told already because this narrator's not telling me the truth necessarily. And that's just a really fun thing as an actor to play. A guy who's lying. It's just, Steven said it, he said, you go into a movie, it's fun to watch somebody lie when you know they're lying. And that's kind of, you know, I guess the fun part of the movie.
Yeah, and I love the voiceover aspect of it. Are you hearing things in your head, this whole voiceover thing?
Yeah, well, what happens with the voiceover is when we made the movie, it just becomes addictive to you just start just making up, you know, monologues on your own because it's all stream of consciousness stuff. But Scott is particularly geared somehow towards doing that. He wrote, he made all that stuff up, all the interior monologue stuff, and you know, we had to leave a bunch of it out. He would have 3 monologues for every one that made it into the movie, and he could just write them like that. And so sometimes Steven would say, well, I think I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be able to shoot this, and Scott, you know, can we do a monologue for this? And Scott would go, yeah, I'll be right back. And like 45 minutes later, he'd come back with 3 options. You know,
wow.
They were all good.
That's amazing for you, I would think, as an actor.
Yeah, and well, look, anytime you get a great script, it's such a gift, you know, as an actor, and we had 7 years with this one, so we had all this time to think about it, and Steven and I worked together 3 times during that 7 years, and Scott and I worked together. Scott was one of the writers on The Bourne Ultimatum, so you know, I had like a lot of contact with both those guys during that time, and we would, you know, revisit the script and, you know, call each other, hey, I read The Informant again. It's still really, really good. And you know, so it changed very little once we got there.
Okay, well, let's just, you know, call a spade here, Matt. You're really, truly not the sexiest man in the world in this film, but, you know, Scott Bakula argued with me. He found you quite sexy.
Scott has issues. Bakula. Yeah, no, I mean, it's another one of those things as an actor I'd never been asked to do, you know, to put on weight, and it just, there were so many little things. It was fun kind of putting the character together, all the external things, like the wig I'm wearing there, and, you know, the eyeglasses. There were cheek plumpers that I put in, and there's a thing on the end of my nose that it's like a little prosthetic on the end of my nose that, because Steven's idea was that he wanted him to be doughy because he wanted him to be almost formless, like you couldn't define his you know, where the edges were. He said, like, I don't want to see any hard edges. It's kind of as a metaphor for, you know, a guy who you can't really tell when he's telling the truth.
Yeah,
you can't see where the boundaries are.
Exactly. Now, I want to ask you, do you see Mark Whitaker as a hero, a villain, a bit of both?
I certainly don't see him as a villain. I don't judge anybody in kind of a, you know, but I think he did some things that were incredibly heroic, really courageous, and he shined a light on something that was happening that wouldn't have stopped if he hadn't done that. And he changed, ultimately, what he did changed a lot of the laws and made these punishments harder for these corporate crimes, and I think that's great. And you know, at the same time, he was dealing with mental health issues, and he made mistakes that, you know, the guy ended up going to jail for 9 years and, you know, paid his debt to society. And so, no, I certainly would never cast him as a villain. I think, especially as an actor, when you play a part, you feel tremendous empathy for the person that you're playing, and you have to, or you shouldn't play the part, because nobody casts himself as a villain. So I have a great amount of fondness for him, and think more about the great things that he did than the illegal ones.
Yeah. Great cast in this. My goodness, you know, like, you've been so lucky in your career, but wow, like, let's just talk about working with somebody like Scott Bakula, veteran TV guy. I mean, seriously.
And it's also, it was kind of something that happened across the board in this movie was everyone felt really grateful for the role they were playing in the movie. whether it was the cast or whether people on the crew. Like Steven promoted basically a lot of people who weren't department heads on like the Ocean's movies, but on a $22 million movie, suddenly those guys got bumped up and ran departments, and you know, and that's a big deal. So everybody felt like, you know, I felt like this role was one of the greatest roles I'd ever had a chance to play. I was so happy to be there. Scott, you know, hadn't had a great role in a movie in a while, and he was just so like we would look at each other on the set, like, you know, you believe this? This is, you know, and all the while you're working for Steven, which means everyone's put in a position to do their best work. The hours aren't so long that you're just beating your head against the wall. You're really, everyone's focused, and nobody, you know, you stand on the set all day because there's no time to go back to your trailer, and you want to, you know, you don't want to leave. It really is a kind of a great group experience with him. It's one of the many reasons it's so fun to work with Steven.
Yeah, and I think brilliance on his part for, you know, throwing in some of these comedians in there and making it.
Yeah, and
but
all
Joel
those guys.
McHale,
Yeah.
like, how do you keep a straight face opposite Joel McHale?
I didn't a lot of the time. I mean, that was the thing. Steven hired all these comedians. Scott and I and Melanie, who are the three actors, we broke character more than anybody. Like, we were by far the least professional people on the set, and these guys came in and took their roles really, really seriously. Again, because they normally don't get roles like that. So everyone felt really grateful. I mean, Rick Overton and Tom Papa, you know, those guys. I mean, I could barely get through a scene with those guys. And not because they were doing any shtick or any stand-up, but because their insight into the characters they were playing. I mean, Rick was just like, he's a mouth breather. I get it, you know, and the way he plays this guy, this kind of predatory corporate. I mean, it was great. I learned a lot watching those guys.
You know, I was saying to Scott, we were joking around about you because I go, where do we find the molds to make Matt Damon? You really are one of those perfect kind of guys. Like, you're such a good guy, seriously. And I want to know how you keep it together, but also with your charity work. Right now, there's so much stuff that you're representing. What right now is the closest to your heart in terms of getting the word out there?
Well, we just started water.org, which H2O Africa merged with Water Partners, and so that, you know, clean water. You know, I've gone just this year to Ethiopia and India, and we're going to go to Haiti. Actually, we're gonna start some programs in Haiti in the coming year, and so that's a great thing, water.org. So anybody who is interested can go visit that website. I'm really excited to be trying to raise awareness.
Running the Sahara was a phenomenal movie too.
Yeah.
Really
Well,
good.
that was I mean, you know, Toronto. I love the festival, and I haven't been here a lot. I usually come for the 1x1 event, which I'm here for again this year, and 1x1 is also connected to water.org. So obviously, you know, I've had that relationship with them for years, and I love those guys over there, and they do a lot and raise a lot of money for kids who really need it. And we have President Clinton coming this year. So.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Matt, best of luck to you with everything.
Thanks,
This is
Bonnie.
so good. Pick out your nice tux for the Oscars because we will be seeing there nicer, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.